Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Before we introduce the speaker, I want to make a few brief announcements. We know many of you are listening in from far away and can't attend local events or programs. That's why we provide this free webinar series. We host multiple webinars per month, so please visit our website to view the current schedule for 2017. Simply visit our website at www.johnson-center.org and click on the webinars link on the right-hand side. New webinars and events are often added, so if you're not on our email list, I encourage you to visit our website and click on the Join Our Email List link that appears on the home page. To get instant news and events from the Johnson Center, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as we announce grant and scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, and last-minute events and presentations there. Be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute as they host their own webinar initiative and they share some great resources on their website and social media pages. Before we begin the presentation, please note that questions may be typed into your control panel throughout the presentation and, time permitting, they will be addressed. Also, for those who have requested copies of the presentation, we don't send out the presentation slides. However, we do post recordings of all our free webinars on the Johnson Center YouTube channel, found on YouTube.com/The Johnson Center with no spaces, and subscribe to get full access to all of our recorded webinars. If you would like a certificate of attendance today after today's webinar, look for the follow-up email in your mailbox about 1 hour after the webinar concludes. It will contain instructions on how to download your certificate. Now, please welcome today's presenter, Dr. Claire Schutte. She is the staff psychologist here at the Johnson Center, and she brings her expertise, compassion, and understanding to all she does here, whether it's completing assessments and diagnostics, running sibling or social skill camps, or working on her research projects. Please welcome our presenter, Dr. Schutte.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Claire Schutte and I'm our psychologist at the Johnson Center. I'm looking forward to presenting today's webinar, Organizational Strategies for Students with Autism Spectrum Disorder in Middle School and Up. I'd like to start by reviewing my agenda for today. I'm going to start off by defining organization and how it relates to what is called executive functioning. Then I'll discuss the importance of assessing organizational needs and skills. I'll review different teaching strategies and tips for teaching organizational skills. And then most importantly, I'll cover many different tools that can be used to improve and support organization. I like the definition of organization as efficient and orderly approach to tasks. When I was thinking about this webinar and the idea of organization, I realized how broad the topic of organization is. Difficulty with organization is something that all of us struggle with from time to time. Organizational skills are related to what is called executive functioning. And in simple terms, executive functioning is a set of different mental skills that help you accomplish things and get things done. Oftentimes, we see difficulties with executive functioning skills in individuals that have autism spectrum disorder or other learning and attention differences. And individuals might struggle with all aspects of executive functioning or just particular areas of it. Executive functioning skills can be viewed as the command and control center. They help with things such as inhibition, which is the ability to control your behavior at appropriate times, such as stopping your actions or stopping your thoughts. And the opposite of inhibition is impulsivity. So children that are impulsive and have lots of impulsivity struggle with inhibition. Shift is the ability to flexibly move from one situation to another and to think flexibly in order to respond appropriately to different situations. Emotional control is, as it sounds, it's the ability to modulate and control your emotions according to the situation and what's most appropriate. Initiation is the ability to begin a task independently and to generate ideas, responses, or problem-solving strategies, basically to get started. Working memory, the ability to hold information in your mind and then use it when it's needed. And then planning and organization is the ability to manage current and future tasks and demands in an orderly way and to create order within your environment. And self-monitoring is monitoring your own performances set at certain expectations. So all of these that I just covered are different aspects of executive functioning, and I'm going to be narrowing in on the aspect of organization. But many of these different skills are interrelated. So when I'm discussing organization today, some of these other skills might come into play as well. I'm going to touch on many different tools for these areas. And some of the tools that I talk about today can be used also to support other skills in addition to organization. Children can start working on these types of skills early because it helps set them up for success later. As children develop and get older, demands for organization increase. For example, thinking about younger children, they can learn what they need in order to get dressed, to take a bath, and do other daily activities. And as they get older, they may be responsible for cleaning their own room, for organizing their belongings, and planning what to pack to leave the house. As school approaches, organization and planning regarding schoolwork comes and becomes higher demand. And really, organizational needs and demands increase as the child gets older and becomes more independent. Today, I've focused more on the ages of middle school and older as executive functioning and organization become very important. But again, many of these tools that I'll be discussing later can be applied to earlier ages as well. They might just need to be modified to the developmental level. It's always a good idea when you're going to be trying to support any area of skill to start with assessment to figure out your treatment plan and what goals need to be targeted. Assessment helps identify where the needs lie so you know exactly where you need to support. Luckily, several assessments exist to evaluate executive functioning related skills. For example, there's several different parent rating skills, such as the Behavior Rating Inventory of Executive Functioning or the Connors Parent Rating Scales. Both of these parent report questionnaires specifically assess areas related to organization. And additionally, many standardized, directly administered cognitive assessments help measure aspects of executive functioning and cognitive skills related to organization and planning. For these types of assessments that I just mentioned, typically a psychologist, a school psychologist, or a neuropsychologist would complete these assessments. However, assessment of organizational needs can also be done more informally through parent and teacher observation. Taking notes on observations of where the child's organizational needs are, for example, can be helpful. When assessing organizational needs and what you need to support, it's important to consider how the individual learns best, because this is going to help determine what types of tools might be most appropriate. Are they more of a visual learner? Do they learn best through seeing things and watching them? Do they learn best through hearing information? Is it best when instructions are given orally and they hear them? Or does the individual learn best through action or doing it? This would be acting out the steps of something, and that helps them learn the best. Or the individual might be a combination of these. But it's good to just have an idea of how the individual learns the best and then use that information when choosing tools to support organization. It's also a good idea to think about what the individual's organizational style is like. There's a few different types of organizational styles, and not everyone fits into one of these, but these can also help determine what tools might be useful. For example, is the individual more of a visual organizer? Visual organizers like to have everything kept within sight. They might feel disorganized when the work area is visually overloaded or overly visually stimulating. They respond well to visual cues such as color and picture. Whereas spatial organizers tend to be more sensitive to their environment. The workplace needs to feel good and orderly in order to do work. And these individuals need their space to be clean and calm. And then chronological or sequential organizers tend to think more with numbers and pay attention to detail. Sometimes the workspace may appear messy, but it's all in a particular order to them. Chronological and sequential organizers tend to respond well to structure and order. So again, I'd like to just emphasize that evaluation, parent and teacher observation, and just kind of informally assessing how the individual best learns and what their organizational style is can help identify where the needs lie and how your child might respond best to different organizational tools. Once you have a clear picture of this, a plan and goals can be put into place, and you can have a better treatment plan for how to teach and support organizational skills. So let's talk about teaching these types of skills. There's many important things to consider when teaching organizational skills, and these are just some of the things to keep in mind. When you're teaching different strategies and the use of different tools, you want to teach them explicitly and in a structured and systematic manner. You want to break down the tasks and start at a reasonable place, starting with one or few tasks and then gradually building up to higher numbers of tasks. You also want to use lots of modeling and practice. The more you repeat and practice particular strategies, the more likely they're going to be used. And you also want to teach these in a setting where they're needed to be used, such as in the home or school, not only in the teaching environment. This is basically generalizing what you're teaching to the relevant environments. You also want to make sure the teaching style is individualized and works with the student's learning and organizational style. And very importantly, what we're going to talk about on the next slide is don't forget about supporting effort and motivation. Behavior isn't going to change if this isn't there. So really, do you have motivation? If you want to see organizational behaviors improve and increase, you need reinforcement. So you want to think about what can you do to make becoming organized and using tools reinforcing? What motivates and reinforces the student? Remember, reinforcement can be many things, such as verbal praise, attention, access to tangibles, being able to do preferred activities. You can also try if-then activities, such as if you organize your things for tomorrow, then you can watch your favorite TV show. It's also helpful to do non-preferred tasks first and then preferred tasks. But you really want to, when you're trying to teach and increase any skill, think about motivation and how you can reinforce the behavior that you're trying to teach. Another thing that's important to remember is being creative. Not all organizational strategies work for everyone. So you may need to think outside of the box and come up with what you find works for you or for your child or for your student. It may be a combination of some of the different tools that we talk about. You may notice through observing the student that they really respond to certain cues or certain input. So you create your own organizational strategy for the student. But it's important also to remember that not all individuals on the spectrum are the same, just as we're all different. So you're going to have to, again, be creative and come up with strategies that work for the individual and are unique to the individual. So moving on, we've talked about assessing organizational skill needs and figuring out what areas you need to support, as well as trying to figure out what type of learner and organizational style the child is, as well as specific tips for how to teach organizational skills and what to keep in mind. Now we're going to move into an important part, specific tools and strategies that support organization and help you reach your goals. It's helpful to create regular routine when we're talking about organization. Routines help with consistency and therefore staying organized. The more that you repeat and make something a routine, the more likely it's going to keep happening. You can easily create organizational routines, such as every evening before you go to bed, you tidy up your room. Some tips for routines are to practice a predictable daily schedule. So identify times that your child engages in an activity and try to keep it the same each day. When children and parents know what's coming next, it makes routines that much easier to follow. Think about how you can incorporate organizational strategies into these routines. What routines can help support organization? So think about maybe bedtime and wake-up time routines, what needs to be done for each of these to stay organized. Other times that organization commonly comes into play are when you're getting ready or leaving for school, getting ready for extracurricular activities, meals, homework time, and other structured activities. So try to create a routine and maintain consistency with that as much as possible. Creating and keeping an organized environment, particularly for work areas, is very critical for organization. Some things to think about are keeping it clear from distraction. So with this, we're talking about creating designated workspaces. Keep the space uncluttered. Keep things uncluttered with organizational areas, such as drawers, bins, file cabinets, etc. Keep a calendar and clocks easily visual. Try to create a routine and consistency in using the space. For example, homework is always done in a designated work area. Pick logical placements to keep things. For example, a key ring right by the door, or a hook near the door to hang a purse. Everything important should have its designated place where things go every time. Again, consistency is key. For example, every time a teenager comes home, their house keys and wallet go in a basket by the front door, or a backpack goes straight to a hook on the office door. As you can see in this picture, it's very uncluttered. There's cubbies on the wall that could be designated spaces for textbooks. There's a file space on the left-hand side where binders can be put. There's drawers that could be labeled, that could be designated areas for certain supplies or papers. A big visual calendar could be hung up on the wall. A clock would be a good idea. Obviously, this room looks perfectly clean. As much as you can get it organized, the better. Not everyone's space is going to look exactly this way, but these are just some tips to keep in mind when thinking about the environment and the workspace. Planning ahead can be many things when we're talking about organization. It can be making to-do lists ahead of time, marking things on the calendar, prepping for the day ahead. And as this quote says, it says, "Success starts with planning and prepping the night before. Plan tonight to win tomorrow and own your life." I'd like to emphasize prepping the night before, because doing so can be a great strategy for staying organized. Some helpful ideas are laying out clothes for the next morning, packing the backpack ahead of time, gathering homework and school materials, prepping meals, making a to-do list. By prepping, you'll save time and be less likely to forget anything. Many of you probably do some of these things. How many of you pick out your outfit the night before, or might prep your child's lunch for them the night before? These are small tasks, but think about how much time it can save you, and how much time it can save your student or your child. When you're rushing out the door in the morning, it creates much more of an opportunity to forget things. So planning the night ahead is another wonderful strategy for staying organized. But again, you're going to want to create this time and this routine and the consistency of doing so the night before. Chunking is a term for breaking down larger tasks or strings of information. It can help with organization by breaking down organizational tasks into smaller steps that can be more easily be tracked and remembered. For example, the task of organizing your belongings to pack for an overnight trip, you could break that down into hygiene items, the clothing you need for each day, medications, food. When you break down a task into smaller steps, you're setting yourself up for more success, because it makes it less overwhelming, and it leaves, there's less room for error, and you can better focus on each individual step. So really, all larger tasks typically can be broken down. There are tons of different organizational materials out there. I'm just going to touch on a few of these that can be very useful. Binders are great because you can keep a good amount of information inside, and you can also separate it and organize it into important areas or subjects. You can use things like dividers and tabs within the binders. You can keep everything for one class in one binder, or you can divide one binder into all of the classes, for example. Color coding can be very useful. You can use colors or symbols to create an organizational system. For example, everything for science class is red. You might have a red binder, a red notebook, and a red folder, for example. And seeing that visual cue of everything being read can be a reminder that all of these things are needed for science class. Bins are also very useful. You can see this picture right here. These bins are color-coded by day, and everything in each bin has a matching color that goes into it. So you can use bins in this manner, or you can use them simply as tools to organize your space. But containers, bins, cubbies, these are all great organizational materials. It's also helpful to keep doubles of things that are very important, such as making double copies of a syllabus, having multiple copies of keys. This way, if you lose something, you have another copy. Another tip is to make things big. So things like a keychain or a tag on a keychain can be made oversized so that it's more easily spotted. You can put extra large luggage tags on things to make them better visual cues and harder to lose. Tags are also useful just in terms of organization and labeling. Think of things that'll kind of catch the eye. Again, tags, a highlighter. Highlighters are great organizational tools for prioritizing or for simply just drawing the eye to something that you need to remember. Categorizing can help create organizational systems, such as storing certain categories of things, categorizing and breaking down to-do lists, categorizing binders, for example. So these are just some different organizational materials and strategies, basic strategies that you can integrate into an organizational routine. Now, I want to emphasize again the importance of motivation and reinforcement. You can go out and buy all of these organizational materials, but the student or teen probably isn't going to just use them on their own unless they're getting some form of reinforcement or motivation to use them. So you want to think about that when you're getting the individual to integrate new tools and new systems into staying organized. Like I mentioned earlier, many individuals tend to be more visual learners and organizers. Visual learners need visual cues. They might like to watch someone model a task to be able to see and read lists. Luckily, many of the organizational tools out there are visual and good for visual learners and organizers. Visual schedules are exactly what they sound like. These are pictures of steps of a schedule or a task. There's a wide variety of how to use visual schedules. This is an example of one. This one shows the use of clocks and pictures, so it indicates the time that a task should be done. You can make visual schedules very individualized. There's different tools out there where you can take real pictures. There's several different apps available that can help you develop visual schedules on the iPhone or different devices. But visual schedules are great for visual learners. One obvious thing is you want to make it visual. So if you have a visual schedule, you want to put it up in a place that's easy to be seen, such as on the desk, on the wall where the student's going to see it, on the bathroom wall, for example. You want to make sure that it's easily seen, otherwise it defeats the purpose. Planners and calendars are also great organizational tools. These can be paper calendars or planners, or there's lots of different options available on the iPhone or computer. You want to find what works best for the individual. I like planners that have weekly and monthly views so that you can view the week at a glance and have long enough columns to pencil in all of your to-dos. This is an example that is, this one is a plan for the week, and it has nice long columns divided by the times. I also like being able to have a monthly calendar at a glance. This helps with planning ahead. You can use things like highlighters, color coding, or stickers to prioritize or call attention to certain tasks within a planner. Self-monitoring is another good tool for organization and helping students become more independent in staying organized. Self-monitoring involves the individual measuring and recording their own behavior and then evaluating whether they met a predetermined criteria or standard. So more basically, you're tracking your behavior and assessing whether you're meeting goals. It's really easy to create self-monitoring sheets similar to this one that can be kept in the student's binder or their desk or in their workplace at home. Self-monitoring can be set up on a phone or computer as well if the student has easy access to it. I like self-monitoring because it can be a helpful method of fading out support so the individual takes on more responsibility in managing their own organizational tasks. There's a few things to keep in mind when you're setting up a self-monitoring system. You want to make sure the individual understands the exact behavior that they're going to be self-monitoring. So you want to describe the behavior specifically, maybe model the behavior or point it out. Select a way to measure the behavior. For example, a tally sheet, a card with just check marks under a yes or no column, or you can create more elaborate recordings. It's also helpful to identify a time frame for recording, starting with shorter periods of time and building up. So the student might self-monitor for the first 10 minutes of class, then you might gradually build up to where they're self-monitoring for an entire class, depending on what progress they're making and how successfully they're using the system. It's important that teachers and parents periodically observe, that you're checking to make sure that the student is correctly self-monitoring, and give feedback regarding the accuracy of their self-recording efforts. Initially, you can set up a reinforcement system. When they are self-monitoring correctly, they can gain some type of reinforcement, and you can gradually fade this out to where they're self-monitoring fully independently. This self-monitoring card here, it has some great organizational behaviors that the student is monitoring for themselves. Be prepared for class with all materials. As you can see, this is pretty basic. They just circle a yes or no. Start the assignment when told to begin. Continue working until the assignment is done, and ask the teacher for help in a pleasant way. If we were going to break this down to be more specific to organization, you could provide a few more check marks under this one. Be prepared for class with all materials, and you could list, for example, all the materials that are needed, and the student could circle a yes or no. So this is also a good visual reminder, because they're looking at this, they have to look to see if they have all their materials, for example. But you could do this for a variety of different tasks. It could be for a morning routine, a hygiene routine, self-monitoring for organizing their room, for putting their materials in their backpack for the next day. So self-monitoring is great. It can be applied to a lot of different things. Encourage the use of lists, such as how-to lists and checklists. Checklists are basic self-monitoring tools if the student keeps track of what is completed and are monitoring specific behaviors and whether they meet those. Certain things on the to-do list can be starred if they're very important and prioritized. Be mindful of where the lists are kept. They're not going to work if they aren't seen or they're lost. So you want them kept somewhere that's easily visual and in a safe place where they're not likely to be thrown away or lost. Remember to use chunking and breaking down of tasks so lists aren't too overwhelming. Another way to do this is prioritizing lists. Prioritizing is an important organizational skill. When we're faced with long lists of to-dos, it can be difficult to know where to start and to initiate the first task. And by breaking things down by importance, it's a simple way to order your to-dos. For example, organizing your to-dos as first paying overdue bills, then depositing checks, and then balancing your checkbook. You're kind of prioritizing what should be done first and what's high priority, medium priority, and low priority. Post-its and signs are great visual cues. How many of you have put a post-it reminder on your fridge, on your steering wheel, or on your bathroom mirror? I know this is something that I use often to try to remember things and stay organized. Put visual reminders in places where they'll be seen and close to what you need to remember. This example over here has a big label of morning and a big label of evening with post-its of what to remember under each one. I like this idea because it's very large. So you can put organizational tasks under each of these. Like this one has homework and chores, and this could even be broken down further and have specific steps under it, depending on what the needs are. You can also organize a workspace with post-its or big labels. So you can have a space that says, or a post-it that says work to get ready, work to do, and work that is done, and use different visual labels to organize a desk area, for example, and this would have different stacks of paper under each one. Timing is a crucial aspect of organization, and it involves the skills of planning ahead. Luckily, there's many tools that can help with timing. These can include alarms, visual clocks and timers, and active participation with a clock, such as shading in a clock as the time passes to see how much time you have left. For longer-term timing and planning, the use of calendars are useful. Many of the apps that I'm going to be going over have different timing tools as well. Most smartphones out there, most phones in general, have different timing and alarm features that can be used. But again, prepping ahead of time, having visual clocks so that the individual can see how much time they have to plan ahead or to get a task done is critical for being successful and completing tasks on time. A few tips for individuals that tend to be more auditory learners. They will likely organize best with a mix of visual cues in addition to auditory input, such as verbal or recorded instructions, auditory reminders, alarms, and beeping timers, or verbal repetition and reminders. And then if the student is more of an active learner, make sure that there's plenty of modeling and repeating of organizational strategies. They're going to learn through doing the activity, so practice doing it often with the student, and try to make organizational activities active if you can. Remembering is tricky, and it's something that all of us struggle with, and particularly is important for organization, especially for those people that tend to be more easily distractible. These are just some reminders of reminders. Things like using your phone reminder or alarm. Verbal prompting. Don't forget to grab this. Visual prompts and cues. So things like a Post-it on the refrigerator. Alarm clocks. These are all things that can be helpful cues for remembering. Now I'd like to move on to a fun part, technology. Luckily, technology has kept up with organizational needs, and there's many great features and apps out there that can be useful aids for staying organized. There's options within smartphones and computers, such as the calendar, where you can store important dates or reminders about when to complete a certain chore or a task. Mobile phones can be used to store important information or to act as a reminder. Instructions or reminders can even be sent via text message. This can be particularly helpful because text messages lend themselves to be short and simple. And voice recorders can also be used as auditory reminders of tasks, work, events, or deadlines. So there's lots of different tools available just within most computers and smartphones these days. Now I'd like to talk just about a handful of apps that I found that can be useful for organizational and planning. Again, you want to find what works best for the individual. These might not be the perfect match. I had to just come up with a small handful for the sake of today's presentation. But do your own research and find what the individual gravitates best. You might be looking for something way more simple or something more game-like. So find what works best for the student or your child. The company Good Karma has produced several great apps specific for individuals with learning differences. Their apps are simple to use and provide a variety of organizational tools. The First Then Visual Schedule, which is this first little icon here, is an app that can help create first and then boards, like first you do this, then you do this. Visual schedules, task analysis, which is breaking down tasks into smaller steps. You can use it to create social stories, different choice boards, and it also has options for video modeling. This next icon is the app for what's called Scene Speak, which helps you create interactive social stories in a visual scene. It allows you to customize images with sound, animation, and text, and it's a social stories type app. And then this last icon here is an app called the Visual Schedule Planner, and it's a customizable audio-visual schedule and calendar. And it's special in that there's a variety of different visual supports available that can support a daily event or task. It's completely customizable, it's easy to use, and it has a lot of great features. You can find these or check them out at goodkarmaapplications.com. Here's a screen from, this is the Visual Schedule Planner. The first screen, this shows a day view that's broken into morning, afternoon, and evening. As you can see, there's different, it breaks it down into the current time, the day, the date, and then some afternoon tasks. At 4:30 there's a snack, 4:45 there's free time. And then you can also view, break it down into just afternoon and have that as an optional viewer. So you're just looking at the afternoon on Tuesday and what you have to do. This is a screenshot of the First Then Visual Schedule app. Here we have a visual schedule of getting dressed. What I like about this one is there's different options for checking off completed steps, such as checking the boxes that are complete, or you can do an option of dragging and dropping completed tasks, whichever one works best for the student. This is also customizable, so you can set up tasks specifically for organization that must be checked off. Evernote is another helpful app. It's easy to use and free, and it has many great helpful organizational features. It helps you remember things across all of your devices, so you can sync up all of your different devices. Some of the features I like are being able to create notes. You can create to-do lists. You can put in voice reminders. You can make everything across your devices searchable. So Evernote is another great app. The next few programs and apps I'm going to touch on are some different fun and unique apps in that they've made goal setting and completing tasks more of a game or challenge. SuperBetter, this is the icon for SuperBetter, is a self-improvement app that's particularly good for meeting different personal goals. It helps you earn points for doing everyday things that contribute to overall goals, happiness, and staying organized. So it helps make things seem less like chores and more like fun small missions. Within the app, you can choose from different preset, what they call power-ups, which are kind of breaks for mental and physical health. You can set up what they call quests, which are different steps towards meeting long-term goals. And then they have what are called bad guys that represent different bad habits and negative self-talk, and you try to beat the bad guys. And you can also add in your own goals that you're awarded points for. You earn points, you get to different levels, and there's different achievements that you can meet as you progress. This one is most suitable for individuals that are children that are 8 years of age and older. Habitica makes a game out of accomplishing goals in your to-do lists. You can input your own habits, your own goals in your to-do list, and then you create your own custom avatar, which is pretty cool. Checking off and completing tasks helps you earn points and level up your avatar and unlock different cool features such as armor. You can get pets. You can earn different skills and go on special quests. A fun feature of this one is that you can play with friends to keep each other accountable, and you can use your gold on and points on different rewards within the game. This one's most appropriate for teens for 13 years of age and up. I've listed the websites for both of these if you want to learn more. Chore Wars is another neat game that lets you earn points for household chores. You can get other people in your house or workplace to participate with you and assign awards to individual tasks and chores and watch how everyone does. It also gives options for creating your own character, and this is a great for group task accountability and motivation. And I really like these more game type apps, especially for teens, because it helps provide some of that motivation and reinforcement within the game to meet things off of your to-do list and to stay organized. iPrompts is another helpful app program. It was created by the parents of a boy with autism. There's also been a lot of research by the Department of Education on its usefulness. It provides different features such as visual schedules, a visual countdown timer. Schedules can be emailed and forwarded or printed. It has audio features as well as an image library. You can also upload your own images to use for the visual schedules. And it also has some different modeling clips as a feature. So I've just reviewed several different tools and strategies to help support motivation. There's so many different potential tools, but what if you feel like you've tried everything and your child or student is still struggling with organization? This is something that's common. Whenever you aren't seeing the progress you're hoping for, one thing to think about is taking a step back and reassessing. So here are some ideas to think about when you're troubleshooting and when things don't seem to be working. You want to revisit motivation. What is the student or the individual's motivation to complete these organizational tasks? Do you need to support motivation and to come up with a better reinforcement system? Are you using strategies and tools that match the learning or their organizational style? For example, are you using too many visual tools when they're more of an auditory learner? Are you targeting for generalization? For example, if you're teaching organizational strategies only in a classroom environment, but not seeing it at home, you really want to target it in the home environment as well. It's always best to implement these different strategies and tools across relevant environments to promote generalization. Are the tasks that you're working on too big? Do you need to break them down further and chunk them into smaller steps? How is the environment? Do you need to clean up the environment and provide more organizational materials and tools to help the work environment be more conducive to organization? And do you need to try something new? Should you try a new tool? This is just a small handful of some helpful books and resources that are out there on organization. The Executive Functioning Workbook for Teens. This one specifically has activities for the teen to work on. The book Late, Lost, and Unprepared, A Parent's Guide to Helping Children with Executive Functioning. The website ldonline.org is a useful website that has a lot of information on learning differences and disabilities, as well as different tools and resources. Additionally, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter to receive notifications of other upcoming webinars and resources. And I'd like to just provide a quick reminder that certificates of attendance will be provided. They should be emailed out about an hour after today's presentation. And it looks like we have a few minutes left for some questions. So I'm going to read over those and see which ones we can get to. Okay, I have a few here. My child's room is a disaster, but they seem to know where everything is. Is this a problem, and how can I convince him to clean it? I think this is probably a common problem that many parents face. And even as adults, you might be the type that is pretty messy, but you're organized, if there is such a thing. But there are a few things to think about in terms of this. You want to think about what impact is a disastrous type environment having on the individual. Is it having any impact at all? And what impact could it have in the future? For example, many teens go on to have a roommate in the future. So is having a room that is a disaster now, do you want to implement strategies so that they transition to having a roommate more seamlessly? Most roommates aren't going to want to have another roommate that is super messy. So implementing organizational strategies earlier can help in the future. You also want to think about, would organizing it make them more efficient? So your teen might say, well, I know where everything is, Mom, but if it was more clean, most likely they'd be able to find things a little bit faster. You know, even things like moving across their room to grab something could be more efficient in the morning when they're racing out the door instead of tripping over a bunch of objects or digging through a big pile of dirty laundry to find something. So those are just some of the things to think about, but I know that that is common, like, Mom, I know where everything is, why do I have to clean my room? Okay. This next one says, I feel like if I don't keep track of every assignment for my daughter, nothing would ever get done. I also don't want to be a helicopter parent, and I want my daughter to be more independent. How do I do this? So this one relates to this troubleshooting slide. You want to review if you feel like you're doing everything for your child and they're not able to engage in these organizational strategies without you, you want to revisit some of these things. What tools are you using? Could you add a new tool or reminder? Can you try something like self-monitoring to increase their independence in monitoring their own organizational needs? Could you add in further motivation or reinforcement? Can you break down a task further so they might be more successful? You want to think of all of these things. You also want to consider fading out your own parental support. If you're doing everything for a child for a certain task, can you gradually cut back your reminders and see how your child does? So the goal ultimately is fading out your support so that they become more independent. But you're most likely going to need to use some of these strategies to help do so. Let's see. I've bought all of the organizational things I can think of, but nothing seems to work. Is there something I'm missing? I think this one ties in again to this troubleshooting. These are things that you need to revisit. You might have all of the organizational office supplies in the world, but your desk might still be a disaster. What do you need to do? Do you need to create a different system? Do you need to add in some reinforcement? Do you need to add a self-monitoring system for yourself where you're checking off at the end of each day whether you put your office papers or your school work assignments in their respective spaces? Let's see. Any tips for working with teachers on helping your child work on organization? Most of the strategies that we talked about today are applicable to the classroom environment. One thing that I'd like to emphasize in terms of working with the school is it's best to keep strategies that you're using consistent across environments. So it's really important to communicate with your child's teachers and see what they're using that has been successful and see if you can implement that at home and vice versa. If there's things that you're implementing at home that are working, try to implement those in school as well. And this pertains to the use of particular tools, and it can also pertain to the use of different reinforcement. For example, they might earn points at school and at home that they can use to exchange for a reward, for example. Okay, it looks like we are right at 1 o'clock. I hope that you found this presentation useful today. Thank you for your time and attention. And again, you'll be getting a follow-up email about an hour from now that will give you your certificate of attendance if you're looking for that. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.